When Hollywood legend Jack Carter walked into one of LA's most luxurious restaurants wearing nothing but a simple gray polo shirt and slacks, no one in the bustling dining room gave him a second glance. To the casual observer, he was just another older man, perhaps out of place among the glittering elite of Los Angeles. But what happened next would ripple through the city's social circles, becoming a tale whispered in hushed tones at gala events and shared with wide-eyed awe in script meetings. It all began when an overconfident new waitress, Lena, made the biggest mistake of her career, attempting to kick out and humiliate a man she mistook for a random, underdressed customer. What she didn't know was that Jack didn't just have a reservation, he owned the entire restaurant. And in true Jack Carter style, what followed became a Hollywood legend, a masterclass in dignity that left an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. When Hollywood legend Jack Carter walked into one of LA's most luxurious restaurants wearing nothing but a simple gray polo shirt and slacks, no one in the bustling dining room gave him a second glance. To the casual observer, he was just another older man, perhaps out of place among the glittering elite of Los Angeles. But what happened next would ripple through the city's social circles, becoming a tale whispered in hushed tones at gala events and shared with wide-eyed awe in script meetings. It all began when an overconfident new waitress, Lena, made the biggest mistake of her career, attempting to kick out and humiliate a man she mistook for a random, underdressed customer. What she didn't know was that Jack didn't just have a reservation, he owned the entire restaurant. And in true Jack Carter style, what followed became a Hollywood legend, a masterclass in dignity that left an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. Among them sat Jack Carter, a solitary figure in the corner, his gray polo shirt and casual slacks a deliberate rebellion against the opulence around him. He sipped his house whiskey slowly, the amber liquid catching the light as he surveyed the room with those piercing eyes that had once stared down villains on the silver screen. Most of the veteran staff recognized him instantly. How could they not? His face, etched with the lines of a life lived in front of cameras, was as iconic as the films he'd directed and starred in. But 6 months earlier, when Jack had quietly purchased the Golden Vine, he'd issued a single, non-negotiable directive: treat him like any other customer during his periodic visits. These weren't just whims, they were quality checks, a test of the restaurant's soul. To Jack, the true measure of a place wasn't how it catered to celebrities or influencers, but how it treated the everyday person, the janitor, the retiree, the dreamer. Lena, however, was oblivious to all of this. At 24, she was the Golden Vine's newest waitress, fresh from a prestigious hospitality school where she'd aced courses on wine pairings and table etiquette but skipped the lessons on humility. She was also building her own food influencer brand, her Instagram feed a curated showcase of gourmet dishes and designer aprons. That evening, she'd spent her shift alternating between fawning over the tech moguls and influencers, offering extra breadsticks, flashing her brightest smile, and casting disdainful glances at the man in her section who dared to wear something so ordinary. To her, he was a relic, a disruption to the sleek, modern image she was trying to project. Lena, however, was oblivious to all of this. At 24, she was the Golden Vine's newest waitress, fresh from a prestigious hospitality school where she'd aced courses on wine pairings and table etiquette but skipped the lessons on humility. She was also building her own food influencer brand, her Instagram feed a curated showcase of gourmet dishes and designer aprons. That evening, she'd spent her shift alternating between fawning over the tech moguls and influencers, offering extra breadsticks, flashing her brightest smile, and casting disdainful glances at the man in her section who dared to wear something so ordinary. To her, he was a relic, a disruption to the sleek, modern image she was trying to project. Lena positioned herself at the table, her iPhone peeking from her apron pocket, her practiced smile as brittle as the crystal glasses on the nearby tables. "Sir," she began, her tone laced with a condescension she mistook for professionalism, I couldn't help but notice you've been nursing that house whiskey for quite a while now." Jack looked up, his gaze steady and unyielding, the same look that had faced down countless Hollywood executives and on-screen adversaries. "It's a good whiskey," he replied simply, his voice low and gravelly, carrying the weight of decades in the spotlight. "Perhaps," Lena pressed on, her fake concern dripping like syrup, "you'd be more comfortable at the bar. We're expecting several reserved parties, and this table," she gestured to the pristine white tablecloth, as if it were a sacred artifact, "is typically for our dining guests." A young busboy named Carlos, who'd immigrated from Mexico 2 years earlier, overheard the exchange as he cleared a nearby table. At 19, he worked double shifts to support his family back home, his dreams of acting fueled by late-night marathons of Jack Carter's films with his father. He knew exactly who the man in the polo shirt was. His hands tightened around the bus tub, the urge to intervene battling his fear of overstepping. "I'm comfortable here," Jack said, his tone calm but firm, taking another unhurried sip. Lena's polished facade cracked, just slightly. She glanced at her watch, then at a group of young tech executives waiting impatiently by the host stand, their watches glinting under the lights. "Sir, our executive chef prepares a very exclusive menu." The prices, she paused, her eyes sweeping over his casual attire with a mix of pity and disdain, "reflect the caliber of our establishment." At the next table, an older couple who'd been regulars for 2 decades shifted uncomfortably. The husband, a retired film producer, opened his mouth to protest, but his wife, a former script supervisor, placed a hand on his arm. She recognized the look in Jack's eyes, the same steely resolve that had defined his most memorable roles. "I'm aware of the prices," Jack said quietly, his voice carrying that iconic gravelly timbre, "and the chef's work." Lena's smile vanished, replaced by a tight, irritated expression. She yanked out her order pad, her movements sharp and impatient. "Well then, sir, shall I explain our menu slowly?" The last word was a deliberate jab, a sneer at his age and presumed ignorance. Carlos, still hovering nearby, couldn't stay silent any longer. He stepped forward, his voice trembling but resolute. "Miss Lena, maybe I should get MOCKS." "Stay out of this," she snapped, her voice cutting like a knife. "Go bus tables, that's what you're here for." She turned back to Jack, oblivious to the storm she was stirring. "Now, sir, one last time." The tension in the dining room was palpable, a silent current running through the elegant space. Other guests tried to focus on their meals, but their eyes kept darting toward the confrontation. The contrast between Lena's escalating frustration and Jack's unshakable composure was magnetic, a drama unfolding in real time. "One last time," Lena continued, her voice rising, drawing stares from nearby tables. "This isn't some diner off the highway. This is the Golden Vine. Perhaps in your day things were different, but now we have standards." Jack set his whiskey glass down slowly, deliberately. The movement was subtle, almost theatrical, yet it commanded the room's attention more than Lena's outburst ever could. A few older patrons, veterans of Hollywood's golden age, recognized it, the same measured calm that had preceded some of cinema's most iconic moments. "In my day," he repeated softly, one eyebrow arching slightly, a spark of amusement in his eyes. "Yes, your day," Lena shot back, fully committed now, her months of bottled-up disdain for anyone who didn't fit her vision of luxury pouring out. "When people could just walk in anywhere, dress however they wanted, order the cheapest drink, and take up space meant for real customers." Behind her, Marcus was hurrying over, his face pale, the weight of 20 years of service pressing down on him. Carlos stood frozen, his bus tub forgotten, watching the scene unfold with a mix of horror and admiration. "Modern luxury," Jack mused, his tone thoughtful, as if he were genuinely considering her words. "And what exactly does that mean to you, Lena?" The sound of her name startled her. She wasn't wearing a name tag, but she recovered quickly, assuming he'd overheard it from another server. "It means," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction, "understanding that some places aren't for everyone. Our clientele expects a certain ambience." She gestured toward a group of young entrepreneurs snapping selfies with their gold leaf desserts, their laughter echoing through the room. "They get it. They respect what the golden vine represents. They're not here pretending to be something they're not." The irony of her words hung heavy in the air, a silent rebuke that only the veteran staff fully grasped. Marcus was now just steps away, his expression a mixture of dread and resignation. "Pretending," Jack repeated, that familiar half-smile returning, a flicker of something dangerous in his eyes. "Interesting choice of words." "Listen," Lena snapped, her patience shattered, "I've tried to be polite, but you clearly don't belong here. This isn't some set for one of those old cowboy movies. This is a prestigious establishment, and I won't have you ruining the experience for our real guests." The moment the words left her mouth, the room seemed to hold its breath. Marcus froze mid-step. Carlos dropped his bus tub with a crash that echoed like a gunshot, shattering the silence. The older couple at the next table gasped audibly, their eyes wide with disbelief. But Jack's expression didn't waver. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and dialed a single number. "Jerry, could you bring me the ownership papers?" "Yes, right now." "And the renovation plans we discussed last week." He set the phone down and fixed Lena with a look that could have stopped a charging bull. "You see, Lena," he began, his voice low and steady, "I've been coming here every Friday for the past 6 months, sitting at the same table, ordering the same whiskey. Want to know why?" Lena's face paled, the first cracks appearing in her armor as the implications began to sink in. "Because 6 months ago, I bought this restaurant. Not for the prestige, not for the modern luxury, but because for 50 years, the Golden Vine stood for something real, a place where genuine hospitality meant treating everyone with respect, no matter what they wore or how many followers they had." The silence that followed was deafening. Every fork paused midair, every conversation stopped. You could have heard a pin drop on the plush carpet. Jerry, the restaurant's longtime accountant, appeared moments later, his leather portfolio clutched tightly. He nodded respectfully at Jack, handed over the documents, and stepped back, a faint smile tugging at his lips as he watched the drama unfold. Lena stood frozen, her order pad dangling uselessly at her side. The reality hit her in waves, each realization more crushing than the last. She'd not only insulted a customer, she'd insulted Jack Carter, a living legend. Worse, she'd insulted her own boss, a man whose career was built on standing up to exactly the kind of arrogance she'd just displayed. "Miss," Jack said, his voice carrying that gravelly authority that had defined 6 decades of cinema, "let me tell you a story about this place." He gestured around the dining room, his hand sweeping over the polished wood and crystal chandeliers. 50 years ago, I came here for the first time. I wasn't famous yet, wasn't anybody. Wore a shirt pretty much like this one. The owner back then, Old Man Thompson, treated me like I was the most important guest he'd ever had, not because of who I was, but because that's how he treated everybody." He paused, taking another sip of his whiskey, the glass catching the light like a prop in one of his films. "When his son wanted to sell the place 6 months ago, I bought it for one reason, to preserve that spirit. Real class isn't about designer labels or social media clout. It's about dignity, respect, and treating every single person like they matter." Carlos, still standing nearby, straightened his shoulders, pride and gratitude warring in his eyes. The older couple at the next table nodded solemnly, their decades of experience in Hollywood giving them a deep appreciation for the moment. Even some of the young influencers had set down their phones, their faces a mix of shock and awe. "So," Jack continued, his gaze locking on to Lena with the intensity of a director calling action, for the first time, the question isn't whether I belong here. The question is whether you understand what this place really stands for. Lena's eyes filled with tears, the weight of her mistake crashing down like a tidal wave. But what happened next surprised everyone, especially her. I could fire you right now, Jack said, his voice softening, a rare kindness breaking through the steel. But that's not what this place is about. Instead, I'm going to give you a choice. He gestured to Carlos, who stepped forward nervously, his busboy uniform suddenly seeming like a badge of honor. This young man tried to warn you. He recognized me not from some app, but because he watched my films with his father. He understood something you didn't: respect isn't about appearances. Turning to Carlos, Jack's voice took on a mentorship tone, the kind he'd used with young actors on set. Son, how would you like to start training as a waiter? We could use more people who get what real service means. Carlos's eyes widened, disbelief and gratitude battling for dominance. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, he stammered, his voice thick with emotion. As for you, Lena, Jack continued, his gaze returning to her, your choice is simple. You can walk out that door and find another job at a place that prioritizes modern luxury over people. Or you can stay, learn from Carlos and our veteran staff, and discover what real hospitality looks like. It's up to you. Lena wiped her eyes, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. She looked around at the faces of the longtime staff, Marcus, Jerry, the veteran servers, all watching with a mixture of pity and expectation. Finally, she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. I'd like to stay and learn, sir, if you'll let me. Good choice, Jack said, finishing his whiskey with a final, deliberate sip. Marcus stepped forward, relief washing over his features, and put Carlos in charge of Lena's retraining. As the tension in the room dissolved, the older couple at the next table began to clap, their applause slow and deliberate. Others joined in, the sound growing into a wave of appreciation, not for the celebrity in their midst, but for the lesson they'd just witnessed. It was a reminder, etched in the annals of the Golden Vine, that true class has nothing to do with clothes or status and everything to do with how we treat each other. Today, the Golden Vine remains one of LA's finest restaurants, not because of its luxury or its celebrity clientele, but because of its heart. The walls still echo with the story of that night, a testament to the enduring power of respect. And if you stop by on a Friday evening, you might just see a man in a casual polo shirt sitting at his usual corner table, his presence a quiet guardian of the old values, dignity, respect, and the belief that every person deserves to be seen.